Let's go ahead and get started. I am thrilled today. We're going to be talking about one of the things that I think is most central to our organization here at WhyTry. It's also one of the things that I'm really particularly passionate about as a practitioner. And today we're going to be discussing resilience and the difference that one caring adult can make and how critical that can be to helping these kiddos that we serve, these young adults that we serve out. And so we're thrilled today to have a panel of experts. I'll just go down the line and introduce who we have, and then we'll get right into the material today. So we're thrilled today to be joined. And by the way, welcome everybody. We've got representation from coast to coast, as well as outside of the United States. This is awesome. I love that part. So we're thrilled today to welcome our guest panelists. We're going to start. We've got Dreama Gentry. She's the Executive Director of Partners for Education. She leads Berea College's educational outreach into Appalachian, Kentucky. Partners for Education supports the educational aspirations of 50,000 students across Eastern Kentucky. They've got an annual budget of $40 million. She serves on the board of directors for, how do you say that, FAHE? I'm going to say it wrong. I know.
It's FAHE. It's a housing.
FAHE. It's a community developed nonprofit and the Pine Mountain Settlement School, member of the Equity Coalition convened by the Pritchard Committee for Academic Excellence. They seek to ensure Kentucky's school accountability system provides educational excellence to all students. Recently, she organized the annual Rural College Access and Success Summit that brought together approximately 400 participants from across the country to improve the educational opportunities available to students from rural communities. We are thrilled to have you. Welcome, Dreama.
Glad to be with you guys.
Next, we've got Sarah White. Sarah is the Director of Programs at Partners for Education, provides leadership and oversight to 4 federally funded college access programs, serving students in 33 school districts, worked with college access programs at Berea for 20 years, first-gen college student herself. And we are thrilled to have you as well, Sarah, and thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome. Last but certainly not least, we've got Christian Moore. Christian, the founder of the WhyTry program, internationally renowned speaker, licensed clinical social worker, advocate for youth, author of the book, The Resilience Breakthrough, founder of the WhyTry program, just incredible all-around advocate for youth and kids in general, expert on the topic of resilience, and thrilled to have you, Christian. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jason, I want my credit as a first-gen college student as well. So I want to represent that population. So
I got you.
Especially out here with Berea. All right.
That's a big deal. So I'm going to mention that Christian is also a first-gen college student. Then I'm Jason Johnson. I'll be moderating the panel today. I'm a school psychologist by trade. About 5 years ago, left public ed to come work with the WhyTry organization, and now I get to work with educators and therapists throughout the country. It's one of the great joys of my life. And I guess I'm going to also say that I'm a first-gen college student as well, since we're calling it out.
All right. Jason's representing. All right.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really important topic in general, how the power of a relationship with a caring adult can make a difference. But in particular, right now, we're in obviously unique times where that relationship is now looking different, feeling different, and maybe for some people even becoming more difficult. And if anything, it's probably more important than ever. And so what I want to do, I think the way we're going to handle this today, I'm going to just kind of throw questions at you and see if I can keep you all talking as field experts. And where I would like to start is, let's just start right off the bat, because I think both of you, so Christian representing WhyTry and Dreama and Sarah representing Berea and Partners for Education, I think you both obviously recognize the importance of relationships, but I'd love to hear you both just speak a little bit on, in your opinion and based on your research and experience, what do you think the influence is that a relationship between a student and a caring adult can have. And I'd like to maybe start with Christian and then just go down the line. Let's go Christian, Dreama, then Sarah.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I'm excited to be on here with Berea College, and especially be talking about this subject matter with Berea College. I just want to start out by saying, you know, I've been around a lot of colleges across this country, and what they do to prioritize that relationship, and what they do to deal with the reality of the economic factors that prevent kids from being first generation college students and having opportunity. Berea College is doing a lot of that work. I know there's kind of a big debate across this country. How do we give more kids access to education? So the listeners out there, please get on their website, Berea College, and you'll be blown away. To answer your question, Jason, you know, one of the most, if not the most important protective factor as it relates to being resilient and, you know, having resilience is that one caring adult. You know, I just saw an article that most people right now across this country have 1 to 2, but we need more than one. But if we have that one, that opens up, you know, many, many doors for us. It's literally life-changing. You know, what one person can do that's so important, and we know anxiety is so high right now, you know, anxiety amongst teens, college students. One thing that leads to college students dropping out of college, we know, is that level of anxiety that they have. And what really helps them work through that anxiety is when they have that one relationship, to be seen. These are the 3 most important things that does: to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. When you experience that, you're more likely to reach out to other people socially. And, you know, a lot of times I'm working with, you know, first generation college students. I'm working with kids in high school that are really struggling. And I'll say, you know, who's that relationship? They can't tell me that relationship. And then I'll take that same kid, connect them with a relationship, and you'll see them take social risks that they never would have taken before to connect with other people. So I always look at that first relationship, that one powerful relationship, is leading to many more relationships. It's really the gateway to other relationships. I've seen this with my own kids when they've been mentored by people. The person who did that for me, real quick, a story, I promise I'll keep this under 1 minute. Mrs. Plakos, my 4th grade teacher. I painted a picture. I went out to the Rocky Mountains one summer and painted a picture of the Rocky Mountains. It's my first oil painting I ever painted. I took it back, gave it to my favorite teacher, Mrs. Plakos, and she hung it up in her classroom all of 4th grade. And then 5th grade and 6th grade, she hung it in the window next to her door. So every day I walked down the hallway, I saw this picture for the next 2 years. And she told me over and over again, hey, Christian, you're a great artist. I think one day you may be able to be an artist. And today I've taken, you know, art and mental health and combined them. But that one relationship, that was the first person that told me I had value. I felt seen by her. I felt heard by her. And feeling heard is so important in these relationships. So that's the importance of that relationship. And I'm here talking because of one of those relationships right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Dreama, Sarah, give us your perspective on that.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that, Christian. I think you're right. It takes that one caring adult. And what I've realized in really focusing on moving educational outcomes for young people, specifically trying to get low-income young people into college and through college, it takes a caring adult who also is an educational advocate. I grew up, I was the first in my family to go to college also. I was blessed in my home and in my community to have caring adults around me that made sure that I was safe and I was secure. What they didn't provide for me, though, was this advocate for my education and my aspirations. And it wasn't until, for me, that person was Mrs. Hurt, and she was the guidance counselor at my high school. And she encouraged me to apply for a summer program because she said, you know, you can go to college and you can do this. And my parents had never dreamed that for me. They had thought, you know, I should get out and get a job because that's what they knew, right? Now, once I found that advocate that also thought about educational outcomes, the world opened up. So what we try to do here at Berea College is build and recognize it does take that caring adult, but that caring adult needs to hold those educational aspirations for the young person when the young person may not be able to hold them for themselves. So we talk about, you know, the people that work with us, the communities, how do we build caring adults who are also educational advocates? And Sarah, I don't know if you want to add to that.
So I'll just kind of add one last point around a piece of qualitative data that I picked up even yesterday, and that was we had a kind of a panelist. We had a superintendent that came on and allowed us to ask him some questions, because right now our work is so heavily in the schools and no one knows what the future holds. And so we thought if we could just sit down with some superintendents and say, what's keeping you up at night? And so in the midst of the conversation, he was sharing with us that in those situations where they had a staff member able to work with the student, even though it was virtually, and in the worst situation, the NTI work has been scored so much better and was somewhat much better prepared just by that student having someone to reach out to on the 37 days that they were at home during the last 3 months. And I think, again, it's just that educational advocate that shows up in role and is able to help the students.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I just want to add one thing real quick is those, Dreamer, you were talking about those educational aspirations. For someone to carry those for you, I want to just emphasize the importance of that, because, when I was in my first, years of college, I had an incredible professor who just pulled me aside and said, look, Christian, you can do this. I'm going to tell you, you're going to make a difference in social work. One day her name's Dr. Cox, and she literally threw me up on her back and carried. It wasn't even reality for me. She's the one that advocated to get me into graduate school and stuff. So having that person carry that for you is a powerful, powerful thing. And I know that played a huge role in my life.
And I think too, one of the things we realized too is that parents themselves have not went to college or have had negative interactions with school. They need somebody to carry that for them also. And so a lot of the work that we do through our outreach programs is build the aspirations in the students to support their college dreams, but also help the parents realize that college is a possibility for that student. So it's actually helping the parents to develop more capacity to dream for their children. And I think that's a critical piece too, because what we find is parents want what's best for their kids. Often they don't know how to express it, how to support it.
That's awesome.
No, supporting the parents is so important. I remember my dad asked me, hey, you're the only one, there's 11 other siblings in my family. He said, you're the only one that had to go to college to make it. That was a weakness in my family because no one else had. So that was a tough conversation that day. I'll never forget that. So I wish someone had done that for my parents.
So I'm interested a little bit, maybe Dreama and Sarah, if you could continue the discussion. So you guys represent kind of this Partners for Education piece. And it's funny, Christian and I both brag up Berea College when we're traveling around the country because we've gotten to know you and we're really impressed with what you do. People are always a little bit surprised because not everybody has heard of it. But I think regardless of if they've heard of it or not, I think when they hear about how you approach things, I think there's a lot of really useful lessons that people, educators everywhere, could draw from that. And so I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit more to how you've placed relationships kind of at the center of what you do, because that's one of the real common elements, I think, that we have organizationally between WhyTry and you that kind of brought us together naturally. So speak a little bit about why these relationships are so important to you guys organizationally, and then maybe even describe a little bit. I think you spoke a little bit about it, but maybe go into a little more detail on who you're specifically thinking of when you're talking about those relationships.
So Sarah, should we start with Lily first and Lily's story? Because I think her words, she can probably describe it better than we can.
Especially for the student perspective. Let's do that.
Okay, so they've got a video of one of their students queued up, audio, visual. So most of you on here are educators. You know that technology is always a scary thing on these Zoom platforms. So I'm going to hit play. If you guys will all do me a favor and just in the chat box, give me a yes, type in yes if the audio and the video is coming through good, and that'll tell me that the tech piece is working well. So I'm going to share this video here real quick, make sure my sound is. So give me a yes if the video and the audio work once I hit play. All right, and begin.
You know, I've got a similar story to a lot of people, not super great home life always, and you know, I kind of grew up as the problem child. I had a lot of behavioral issues, never any good grades, and whenever you're not really supported by certain members of your family and you've got one friend to speak of in the entire world, it's really hard to not continue to seek deeper and deeper into that habitual cycle.
I think the most impactful part of our whole mission in Gear Up is that mentoring component. For many of our students, you know, they've been abandoned in different parts of their life, and so they really want to make sure that we're going to keep showing up. So not only is that our job to keep showing up, but for many of us, I would say all of us, that is our life's purpose.
After I got my grades built up a little bit, I was able to go through this interview process to get into PALS, and it soared from there.
She has just really blossomed over the last 4 years being part of the Gear Up program. Whenever I first met her, you could tell that she had such a sharp wit and just boundless compassion for making an impact in the world, but through the Gear Up program, we've been able to find very specific conduits for her to express that passion.
I didn't really know what Gear Up was. I knew what PALS was, but what Gear Up showed me wasn't the name, it was the faces of the people that work with them, and that's what is really important to me. Because in all honesty, if my mentor, Lindsay Gentry, hadn't, you know, really been my #1 supporter starting out freshman year, I don't know if I would be at the place I'm at right now.
She's met with our local representatives, our national representatives, and she just displays the best, just the best representation of a student that you could ever ask for. These kids, I mean, they're my whole life. And I think that all of us, and by all of us, I mean, you know, here in the Appalachian region, and really just all of humanity, we're all just struggling to find our story and where we belong, you know, where we fit in. And through the Gear Up program, we're able to not only give students that sense of belonging, but allow them to know that they are the narrator and the author of their own story. And so we just get to help them, you know, turn the page and keep going, and it's amazing.
You know, being 18 and looking at the future is kind of hard, but you know, I'm gonna go into school and graduate and do all that. But with what I've gotten from this, I would like to put back. You know, I would like to go into work with children and be, you know, the next Lindsay Gentry for someone else. And I want to keep pushing that forward. I want more kids to have access to what I've had access to, because it's entirely changed my life.
All right, Dreama, Sarah, you didn't tell me that you were going to make me cry a little bit on this. What a great story.
Yeah, it kind of makes me tear up a little bit, and I see it often and have watched her blossom all along. So yes.
And I think that she's the reason we all got into this work. And I would say that probably everyone listening to us got into this work because we wanted to be that caring adult. We wanted to be that person that could mentor young people. So it's a good reminder that it works, right? That we are having that impact.
Thank you. Maybe mention a little bit, I think you alluded to it before, but and I'm guessing it will come up again. When you're talking about relationships and focusing on those, what relationships or what relationships with who are you trying to be considerate of?
So I think when we think about the work, our belief is that everyone in a school system and the ecosystem of the school, which includes college access providers like our Gear Up people, our Promised Neighborhood, our Upward Bound folks, that everyone that comes into contact with a young person should be that caring adult and that educational advocate. So a lot of our work at the systems level is when we're working with school districts is how do we help them reframe and reshape their understanding of those roles so that lunch lady and that nice woman who drives the school bus, right, that they also have the training and the support to be that educational advocate and that caring adult, and that anyone that is working with us in our programs, doesn't matter if you're an algebra teacher, you should also be an educational advocate and a caring adult. So that's sort of when we think about it, it's everybody that's in that ecosystem of a school carries that mantle. And it's easy for me to say that, but Sarah's the one who has to operationalize it and to figure out, okay, how do you make it happen? So she has the hard work.
And really, I think the application and the training really is with our staff. And often what happens with our staff is we hear, okay, this was really great. Do you think I could bring along X teacher, or do you think that I could bring along the guidance counselor the next time? Or would you all be willing to come out to our school? And so I can't say that we hold much sway in training folks who don't directly work with us, other than it works. It is uplifting training. And I think that's when I was on a call with someone this morning, and I said, I think one of the best things about the staff that we have, even seasoned educators who come to do work with us after retiring from the educational field, embrace the opportunity to learn, because for the first time, they're learning about things that matter. They're not just filling the number of PD hours they need to move to the next school year. And so what I do with the programs that we supervise, the director of programs and I, we're a team, we've really determined that there is a minimum threshold of training that every student or every staff member that works with us needs to have. And it begins with something as simple as I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget, our, oh my goodness, the word left me. The thing that we signed, Rima, it's not our confidential, work
Code of conduct. We have a code.
Yes, thank you, code of conduct. And really, it's not just, okay, we've signed that, now pass them up to the front. We unpack it and we talk about the role that we have, the vulnerable students that we serve, the vulnerable population. Some of those are parents. And we unpack that document in such a way that sometimes folks leave with a little bit of a heaviness about, okay, I can't believe that I'm capable of doing this. And that's okay, because we want them to carry that. The next step is we begin the training. And that's really how I first came to appreciate the work that Christian does and the whole WhyTry model, because it really does speak life. It teaches folks how to speak life into kids who may have never had that before. It gives parents, or excuse me, it gives our educators and our counselors a toolbox of ready-made activities that they can use, knowing that it will bring success and not harm to a student. And when we can equip them with that, and they know, I might get called in to do a substitution day because someone may get sick in the middle of the day and I may end up teaching the last 2 hours of the day, but I got this, I got this right here. And so that's really what brought us first to the work that you all do. And that's where our, I guess, not just the training, but also the understanding of the role that you're holding in our organization begins.
I love that. So you actually take the code of conduct and use that to expand their role, kind of reframe and expand their role beyond an educator delivering this topic to an advocate. Advocating. That's incredible. Dreama, were you about to say something before I throw over to Christian?
Yeah, I think, that the universal piece that Sarah talked about of ensuring that all of these adults have this training that are interacting with young people. And the code of conduct really also impresses that legal responsibility. And first we have to protect children. We have to protect them, right? So that has to be built in there. But I think the Lily's story with Lindsay is also so powerful because she was getting real targeted intervention. So she actually had the same mentor for more than 4 years. So that's our other piece, is we recognize there are some young people that do not have that caring adult or educational advocate outside of the school ecosystem. So how do we match them with someone who will travel with them from 8th grade to entry into college? And that we find it's hard to do. It's hard to think about how do you transition an employee from middle school into high school into college. But we also realize if we don't do it, that child won't have that person. And so often the Lindsay Gentry are the most consistent connector that our young people have. So while all of our kids do get some interaction, there are some that really get that intensive, focused work with the same person over multiple years.
That's awesome. My school psychologist brain is buzzing like 100 miles an hour right now. There's so many things I want to ask you, but I'm gonna refrain for now. I want to throw to Christian because I can see he's got some thoughts. Christian, how would you kind of connect this model to the WhyTry model, and what are your thoughts on what?
Yeah, I mean, I have, it's been amazing. In the last year, I guess twice now, I've been able to interact with some of the staff there at Bria and the students. And I'll tell you, the students, man, they gave me a serious education on, we teach this concept of surrendering the one-up relationship. And as I interacted with the students, they were surrendering the one-up relationship to me. They knew the language. They were talking to me about it. And it just had to see the impact in their lives was amazing. But I just want our audience to kind of understand a little bit of the secret sauce you guys are using. So surrendering the one-up relationship just means we create an environment where all students know they have value and worth, whether they succeed or whether they fail. So the relationship is not just predicated upon success. So you saw the young lady in the video there a minute ago. She knew she was in a safe environment where she could be herself. They started where she was. She said, she came from a difficult background. She had some acting out behaviors. And I can tell you, in interacting with the staff at Bria, they literally start where that child is and really prioritize, what I call relational resilience. And there's a huge tie there where, it's that interdependence with someone else. And it's a safe interdependence. They know your strengths, and they know your weaknesses, but they treat you the same. And I'm really impressed how you guys do that. Then you guys also, really access the 3 R's. That first R is that relationship, the ability to surrender the one up. And then you really focus on what's relevant to these kids. And you know the background that these students have come from, and you keep it relevant to them. From the education, from the classes, as I've talked to students, they're like, they totally understand some of the rural challenges and our home lives and what we've been through. And so I want to emphasize the relevancy. When you're relevant to these students, you're showing them we care about you, because we're going to speak your language. We're going to go into your world, and that relevancy piece is so important. And then, of course, you guys are teaching some incredible resilience to these kids. And as I talk to your students in the last, few months that have just, not be able to graduate and go through all kinds of challenges, man, you got some amazing, resilient students there. I mean, they inspired me. And so anyways, those are the ties that I see. But you guys are surrendering that one-up relationship just naturally there in a very powerful way. So I very much have, it's helped me. I thought I understood that concept, but watching what you guys did with that, it has been very humbling and very powerful. So thank you for what you did with that.
And I would speak to that relevance piece. I think one of the things we realized early on is that place matters where we work. So we're working throughout Appalachian Kentucky, and the place forms the young people in positive and negative ways. And so when we think of who we hire to do work as staff, who we bring on to be mentors to students, we want individuals who share that love of place and that understanding of place. And I think having that, it's overcome a lot of, some people would say that you need to have age, you have near peer is necessary. Well, I've seen retirees come in and be powerful mentors because they grew up in the same holler in the same county as the young people, and they can speak to that place piece. So I think that's a key piece. The other thing we're trying to do more of with the relational piece, and Sarah can speak to some of the ways we do it, is peer mentoring. Right? I also think that if we can give these young people a chance to be the mentor to someone else while they're still in high school, then that's huge. And Sarah's had some real success with some peer mentoring and peer relationships.
Thank you, Dreama. So when we were rolling the video, I noticed that Lily mentioned PALS, and I put in the chat box, but for those of you that didn't get that, we created a leadership program, and the title from the students and the staff at the time is Promising Appalachian Leaders in Service. And so the PALS group has probably been the strongest group of peer mentors we have. They are now either sophomores or juniors in college, and they started with us when they were much younger than Lily, when they were freshmen in high school. school and stayed through that program with us. And now that they've gone to college, they started reaching out to us and saying, you need to let us come back. You need to, next time you have a PALS retreat, to have us on the agenda. And so we have done that. They have great stories. We also do some larger events. Anytime that we do a large Gear Up event, we bring back students who are either successfully in college or students who have graduated, because we want that message just to be the theme of all the work that we do. We do, when I think about our mentoring scaffold, we start with students at the 6th grade. And at that grade, we're really just introducing them to the concepts so that they could begin to know a mentor if they've got one in their family or even in their life. You know, oh, I know what that means. That's what Coach so-and-so does for me. And then as we go up through the 7th and 8th grade, we begin to establish leadership clubs. And out of those clubs grows the more intensive work at the high school around PALS. And so we begin to do that work in a way that we realize that by the time students are sophomores and juniors, they may have mentors that are not related to PFE, and that's okay with us. We also, it's really like a case management approach. We are looking for the students who need the one-up, as Christian said, and aren't getting it anywhere else. And when we find those, that's really where mentoring is deep and it reaches other stakeholders. That's where you see mentoring happening with their families, because that's the families that need to spend the weekend hearing from family folks at the same time we're working with their students.
And I think too, the other piece of this is, you know, Sarah and I have been doing this work together close to 20 years, maybe more than 20 years, right? And you know, because it is a calling to do this kind of work, and people stay in this work, is we also try to hire the young people that have come through our programs as staff. And I think that is something that folks who do this work and hire counselors and hire staff and hire teachers, how do you also hire those folks who would have been those students? So we have a project director now who went through our Upper Bound program, right? We have multiple staff that are AmeriCorps members that went through our program, and then we'll end up hiring some of them. So I think we also have to force ourselves as organizations to hire and give preference to those young people that we have supported through college success.
Well, that's awesome. Another thing I've observed there, Bria, is, you know, because you're in a more rural area in Appalachia, like you don't take those relationships for granted. There's gratitude in those relationships between the student and the teacher, the person. And I've talked to students there who are like, they're so grateful for the mentors and the people, and there's real sincere gratitude there. And I think coming out of COVID, you know, just a small interaction in those relationships, you know, small things are big things because we're so isolated. I think you guys have done a great job, even before COVID, having huge gratitude for, if someone takes the time to invest in you, the students understand and have that gratitude, which keeps that momentum going. And then the teachers have tremendous, the professors and stuff have tremendous gratitude for the students. And that's a unique thing I haven't seen in a lot of environments. I want to be able to, as I'm consulting across the country this next year, is I want to share a little bit about that mutual gratitude. This is just kind of coming to me right now just as we've observed this, but I think I just want the listeners to hear a little more of that secret sauce you guys are using, but there's a big flavor of gratitude there. What are your feelings about that? Is that making sense what I'm saying?
I think so, and I think it ties into that cultural piece, right? And it also, when you think about the staff having that gratitude for the students, it goes back to, again, making sure you're hiring the right people for the work. And we're thinking of who we hire to do the work within a Gear Up program or a program. We're thinking about who can and wants to be that caring adult and who will appreciate that experience. You might be the best algebra teacher ever, but if you really don't like kids, you don't belong in our organization, right?
Yeah,
so,
no, you guys have made that pretty clear there in my observation.
Yeah. So,
awesome.
You know, and so part of it is we have to be really, and I think we have a responsibility in this kind of work for only bringing into this realm of caring adults and educational advocates, folks who really appreciate young people and have aspirations for young people.
That's awesome.
And I think I would be remiss here. excuse me, be remiss if I didn't mention the partnership with their school district. So much of what we do is in partnership with them. When we hire a staff member, they're always at the table with us if we're placing that person in their building. If they are hiring using funds that we made through Partners for Education somehow support, then they always allow us a seat at the table. And it really is, I think, a joint effort. Our goals as an organization, our overarching result is that all Appalachian youth succeed. And that's the overarching result, no matter what their mission statement may say. That's how they want to see their work unfold as well. And so we do really partner with 41 school districts that are joining us in this work. And they do a lot of time recruiting the staff that works in the schools. We, and I don't know the statistics, Dreama might, while we work, at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains as our regional organization, our folks are on the ground in the deep eastern Kentucky counties, over 31 Appalachian counties. And we really, it goes back to the place base, we want to hire from within. And so there's a great need for us to rely on our partners in the school districts as the main one to hire the best people for the work.
Awesome. I think that's increased that family environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Dreama used the word, and I know it was very deliberate. I think she used the word earlier, ecosystem, and I love that concept. I think you guys are actually pretty visionary in kind of seeing that symbiotic relationship where everybody in the community really plays an important role in helping people understand that. One of the cool things that's been happening with this, and it's been kind of unique to this webinar, a lot of people have been typing in their story, like thinking about who that one caring adult was for them. And I think that's been fun. When you dig into like the last 40, 50 years worth of resilience research, the most common protective factor that shows up across 4 decades of resilience research, the most common protective factor that is consistent with kids that are resilient is the presence of a caring adult in their life. And so there seems to be kind of this inherent value in the relationship. And I think we're going to try to talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the specifics, within your model and kind of the WhyTry approach. What are some of the practical strategies that you can build on top of that relationship so you can really leverage it and kind of take it to the next level? But before we do that, I want to pivot just a little bit and ask you all kind of the hard question of the moment that's on a lot of people's minds. I think most people agree that relationships are really important and significant. We are in an unusual situation right now with COVID-19 hitting, and it's really impacted how our relationships look and operate as well. And even just on Sunday, for example, I was out for a walk and I ran into a neighbor that's a high school biology teacher, and I was asking her how she was doing, and her response was, "I'm really nervous." I said, "Oh, how come you're nervous?" She knows I'm a school psych, and so we always talk education. I go, "How come you're nervous?" She goes, "Well, this year when COVID-19 hit, I had the first part of the year to develop relationships in person, and I'm nervous about what next year is going to look like. Our state right now has trending upward cases, and so it's making educators really nervous about what the fall is going to look like." And she said, "I don't know how I'm going to be able to build the relationships starting off in that virtual world." I know that you with PFE have really had to deal with that and do some things. I'm curious what your insight, as well as yours, Christian, on ideas, tips, strategies, anything that could be helpful, because I think that's one of the really heavy questions that's weighing on a lot of educators' minds is how do we take this value of relationships and apply it in this COVID-19 world that we find ourselves in, where we're very likely in, at a minimum, a blended model, but quite probably, still in a virtual model. So that's that's probably a poorly worded long question, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. I'll throw it out to any of the three of you that want to go first.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and go first. Great human need is to just know somebody's thinking about you, right? I mean, sometimes, and especially I know I talk to younger populations, and kids in their teens, the early 20s is, as a therapist, when they're really hurting, or I'm seeing suicide ideation, severe depression, is they often talk about not feeling heard or seen. And so, because of, everything, so many things are online. I know we're probably gonna have blended approaches going into the school year. The little things like a quick text or even the Zoom chat we're doing, little things right now, just even that 30-second communication now is a huge, huge thing, just so that another human being is thinking about you. So from just a thumbs up, a question to respond to. One thing I'm doing with some of the older people in my life, younger people as well, when I'm dealing with the elderly or younger people, is just asking them a question to get them to communicate something to me so they know, hey, at least I was thinking about them. And, even over this weekend, I was talking to Mama Jackson, and she cried. She's very emotional about how relationships have impacted her life. And everything from a funny meme to, that phone call to Mama Jackson, whatever, all those simple things I'm starting to realize are big. Like, I watch my kids light up like a Christmas tree over a text sometimes, or they're so excited they'd rather play a video game with 3 or 4 of their peers, they do something. I know that's normal, they do something with me, but what I'm saying is, as a therapist, I'm starting to realize, oh my gosh, the mental health world, we would say you have to have as much intimacy. I'm not minimizing the importance of intimacy. Intimacy is extremely important. I wish people had in-person 5-hour conversations. That's what I believe. But the reality of where we are today, those little things do not overlook. I'm telling you, a text, a thumbs up, a couple questions. My wife's doing a thing where, her and her, like 10 of these girlfriends are constantly having a discussion. They'll throw out different things to each other to keep a discussion going. So my thing, Jason, is the small things are big things right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jason, I would say that we need as adults to learn from the young people. I remember it was about 2 years ago. I've got a 21-year-old and a 16-year-old boy, 2 boys. We had this argument about 2 years ago where they were saying that they were talking with their friends online. And I'm like, well, how can they be friends and part of your community if you've never actually been in a room and met them? And they're like, they convinced me, right, that these relationships, and I think our young people today have the ability to form relationships that have a level of intimacy using technology. And we as adults have to learn from them. We have to give up some of that power and think that we're the one that's forming the relationship. So it may be learning more about how are young people forming virtual relationships and virtual community, and how can we convince them to invite us in? Right?
Oh, wow. That's, yeah.
Learn from young people, and especially our students that are early in college or high school. I bet they could teach us, right? How do we get them to come in and train us on how do we not be that obtrusive adult who comes in with the power, who says, we're going to now do this, but
This way.
we become part of that virtual community. So we have to let go of those bias that we have, that community and connections look a certain way, and accept that there's a different view. And I think if we can do that, and if we can figure out how to do that, we can be successful during COVID in keeping that connection going.
That's great insight. Great insight.
Thank you. Sarah, what have you learned in this the first half of this COVID experience?
I agree with the points that have already been made. And I think one of the things that I learned is you just have to do it. As soon as COVID hit, we were, as a college, Berea College closed down rather quickly. And I think we were planning a summit. And so we had been doing a lot of research and talking to folks. And we knew that we were going to shut down. We could just all feel it coming. And so we had packed up and were ready to go home. And so as soon as we got home, we started mobilizing. You know, we didn't give our staff time to fear it. We started doing Zoom calls every day at 4 o'clock. We started telling them, I don't care if it's Facebook Live. I don't care how you do it. You need to be pulling small groups together. If it's just 3 kids, then you tell them to bring 3 kids along tomorrow. And everyone just was waiting for the permission to do that. It's an environment that we had never lived in before. They weren't sure, can I I reach out in my role. And so, you know, we revisited the code of conduct. We looked at some just really strong suggestions around, it is your work day. This is what you should wear. This is what should be in your background. Short of that, hop on and start working. And then the second thing that our staff did really well is we started reaching out to administration. And this is something that I learned during this. In my mind, I was thinking, this is going to be great. This is going to give us time to do all the platforms that we've wanted to do. We've got a captive audience. And the school districts were like, stop. If there's one thing we ask, it's that you don't do anything differently, no matter how good of an initiative you think this is. Please don't add anything to the plates of the kids. We are just trying to get them to get by with their daily work. If you could step into that space, we would appreciate it. So started trying to do some online trainings about how to tutor better, how to navigate an online technology lifestyle, and and so we did that. The other thing that I think that I'd like to invite Dreamer to talk about, because she usually does, I heard this again yesterday from the superintendent, is the digital divide and the inequity of the work that needs to happen for rural America.
And I guess what I'll say there is, we all know there's a digital divide. And that digital divide is children in poverty, whether they're rural America or inner city, right? Because of the cost of broadband and the access to broadband. And how do we also, as college access professionals, work on those systems level policy shifts? How do we advocate and elect people who want to see access for all? I think that's a critical piece. But Jason, I'll sort of turn us in a direction that we didn't talk about here, because I think that we're remiss if we don't also think about, our country has a second crisis that we're dealing with. Racial equity and the lack of equity that our young people of color are facing every day it's I think we're at an opportune point where we're starting to see the damage that's happening, right? And so when we think about relationships, I think one of the things that we've realized, and through our work, our staff, we're saying we have to center racial equity in our work, right? And that might surprise folks, because when you look at demographics, we're a predominantly white area. Appalachia is predominantly white, like 95%, 97% white. However, our young people of color in Appalachia are struggling, and they need relationships, and they need relationships with people who look like them, who can share those experiences. So one of the things that we're struggling with, because we may be doing some things right, but we have a lot of work we also need to do, is how do we bring in mentors and caring adults and educational advocates who look like the children we serve. And I don't think it's just us. I think across the country, we're not, that's not happening, right? When you look at who are the teachers in the classrooms, who are the guidance counselors, who are the school leaders. And so I do think that that's really weighing heavy on our hearts, and we're trying to develop our plan for addressing that. And Christian, I don't know if you've in your work that importance of that mentors and relationship folks look like. Is it important?
Yeah, very important that they have role models that are just like them, that a young African American child that has African American mentors, that has seen people who from their same community, their same neighborhood, overcome and stuff is one of the most powerful things in the world. And we, one thing I was just giving a speech yesterday, and I really believe right now with racial inequality, the change really has to start in the white community reaching out and creating these changes. The African Americans have been screaming about these issues for over 400 years. We as white people have really got to engage on these issues. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Dreama, because, and we have to, look for those different mentors. Now, if a child's in a situation where they can't, they're not in a situation where they cannot access a mentor exactly like them, it's still better that they have that human connection, that relationship. I definitely want to emphasize that. But one beautiful thing about the African American community, I know particularly, if you reach out to them and ask them to mentor children, I have never gotten much pushback. They are very interested in doing that. They need the invitation. They need to feel, hey, we really want them there at the table, influencing, these kids. And there's a lot of outreach that can be done from, in the community, from the school can reach out to mentors. You work through the churches, different things, reach out to mentors to engage. And I can tell you one thing, in the Hispanic and the African American community, they if you invite them, they will show up. That has been my experience.
And I think one of the things we're challenging ourselves to also is, as we hire staff, how do we also ensure that we're hiring staff that mirror the students that we're serving? And how do we also change that pipeline of teachers and guidance counselors, right? So those are bigger policy questions around how do we encourage young people to become teachers and become guidance counselors. So those are some we're still struggling with.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm so excited about the model there at Bria is if the model, and those that don't understand this, they work with the economics of these kids. And so if the kids, they have to meet an economic threshold, a low economic threshold, and they get into Bria College, everything's paid for. It's amazing what they do there. Now, that's great that that's there in Bria, Kentucky, and I love it, but we got to have schools like Bria in Baltimore, Chicago, in these environments, so that we have more African American and Hispanic school counselors, teachers. And the greatest teachers that influenced my childhood, my life, were African American teachers, African American women, and were unbelievable teachers. Now, African American men teachers were great too that I had, but what I'm saying is, it makes me sad that my kids don't have as many African American teachers that I had growing up. I had several. And they literally, they woke me up to a lot of stuff. And it's been so powerful in my life. And it's one of the heartbreaking things in my own children's education that they really have needed that. And but it starts with education reform in this country. That's a whole nother workshop I don't want to get into, but basically it's resources. We need educational opportunity and resources in these communities, especially in urban environments, and in rural areas that goes into. And there's rural African American communities too that need these educational opportunities, and that's why I'm talking about Bria in a lot of different places, because when this country is trying to reform education and poverty issues, we know the way out of poverty is education. If we want to lower violence in this country, it's through lowering poverty. We have to deal with poverty if we're going to deal with violence. And that's another workshop for another podcast, but I just want to plant that seed. I'll be quiet.
I love that. I appreciate it. And I think, one of the things hopefully we're all learning to get better at is to use our voice. You talk about reform, Christian, but before the reform starts, we all have, I think, a greater voice than what we realize. And so I really appreciate it. I actually had goosebumps when Dreama was talking. I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it has to be addressed and it has to be considered right now. One of the things Christian alluded to it earlier, the foundation of our model is a thing we call the 3 R's at WhyTry. And the first R is the relationship. The second R is relevance. The third R is resilience. But that relevance piece is really, really vital. And when we go out and talk about relevance, we'll talk about additional subsets of relevance. So initially we're talking about, how do I make my message apply to a kid's life? That's what's going to make them interested in it. But then there's these subsets of relevance that are generational relevance. How do I speak as a person from an older generation to somebody in a younger generation? And then there's a cultural relevance piece as well that we have to be considerate of. And I think what you've all described is that there is a bit of this cultural divide that occurs in education that we have to address at some point if we're really going to be able to advocate and help these kids really see models that look like them, that they can follow, that can walk with them and help them navigate and really get the most out of this education system. So I'm really grateful, Dreama, that you brought that up. We've got limited time. I do want, if we can, and I don't think it's too much of a pivot, but I would really be curious. We've talked about some really great things, a lot of big ideas. Do you have any practical strategies, any specifics from your model that you could share that somebody that may not have access to a Berea in their community or may not have access to WhyTry in their community, but some practical strategies that our participants could take away that they could maybe start to apply right now to start trying to build some of this vision, some of this culture, some of this community that all of you have been participating in? Let's go Sarah, then Dreama, then Christian, and that'll probably get us to the end.
Thank you. So I appreciate that you brought that up. Drew mentioned earlier that we've worked together for over 20 years, and we didn't start as large as we are now. And I think that it's remembering, for me, it's listening to the stakeholders, which I go back to the statement from the superintendents about please don't bring us anything new. I think that that's one, when you start, you just find what you believe in. And for us, it was the WhyTry model. And then we rolled that out as the threshold for what we wanted our staff to know. Maybe that's as far as you get year one. You take the folks that you're working with and you make sure that they do understand vulnerable populations and that they have a level of training that you're comfortable with. And if you can do those two things well, then that will get you started.
And on a practical level, map where you are and where you're starting. So if you're in a school and you're a sixth grade teacher or a guidance counselor, put all the names of all the sixth graders on the wall and then have each adult go by and put their name by the child that they know personally, that they can identify and that they have something in common. And there's some exercises where you can actually say, I know I'm a little bit, or I know I'm a lot, or I've never heard about it. The red, yellow, and green. Then look at that list and see who are those young people who no one knows? And then you start with that as your priority group. And then you do a similar type of mapping at the community level. You know, look at your churches, your community organizations, your colleges, and determine, is there groups of mentors available? And have those conversations and try to start small, but start with those young people who people don't know their name. Every child should have someone who knows their name in the school. Our second level of that mapping is then also take those children or those young people and determine which ones are in clubs or extracurricular activities and which ones are not. Because every young person needs to be engaged in a club or extracurricular activity. If they're not, have a priority strategy for getting them engaged. So you start at the human level, the student level, and you start with where you are. There's no silver bullet or there's no magic curriculum or magic program that's going to do this. It's going to take you looking at who you have and making a commitment that every young person will have a caring adult.
Love it. Love it. Christian, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, going back to those simple things, you know, knowing their names, greeting them when they come into class, focusing only on what's right with them, not what's wrong with them. When I was in a classroom doing some teaching, I used to, you know, candy stripe, polka dot the door frame. And when kids would come into my classroom, I'd say, this is a magic classroom. In my classroom, we're only going to focus on what you're doing right. You go talk to another 10 people about your mistakes, what's wrong with you. But when you're with me, you can mess up, you can make mistakes. My rule is, as long as they're not doing anything to hurt themselves or another human being long term, I'm going to stand next to them. I'm going to be there for them. And when kids are in that type of an environment, they get excited. They thrive in that type of environment. Now, I got to warn you, if you do some of these strategies, they'll get a little bit worse first because they're going to test you. They're going to be like, no way you can be that unconditional with me. But to really communicate, hey, when you're at Brea College, this is an unconditional environment. We know you've overcome tremendous challenges to be here at Brea, but this environment is going to be the safe space. And you know, I work in over 20,000 schools across this country, and when I see that in a classroom in a school, you'll see dropout rates go down, anxiety go down. All human beings need to feel safe to thrive. One of the things that I've been talking a lot to teachers about lately too around this is to just focus on the child's motives more than their actions sometimes. Like with kids, most kids, their motives are usually self-protected. They're just trying to protect themselves. It's a defense mechanism, and their motives are not as negative as people think. So emphasize, and I say to myself, when I'm dealing with someone, if their motives are malicious, I have a harder time being patient. But if a person's motives are not malicious, then we got to give them tremendous flexibility. So intent, I kind of pay close attention to that intent. you know, and then the other thing I think is important, and right now these kids are, you know, screaming for some connection, and that's have an appropriate vulnerability. You know, this is some of Brene Brown's work around Brene Brown. Always have a hard time saying it. Brene Brown's work around vulnerability. You know, we get close to other human beings as we have authentic, real, vulnerable conversations. That creates intimacy, and which in turn creates resilience. So resilience, we've been talking about the importance of that relationship. But if you want to kick up that relationship, that vulnerability and being real and taking a little bit of a risk in that relationship creates connection in many ways. And then, you know, active listening. We're working on a thing in WhyTry where we have something called resilient listening, essentially, where one of the goals of that is to truly seek understanding over agreement. And you're going to, I'll kind of end on this point, you know, you see what's going on in this world right now where we have so much divisiveness. And what we've got to take time to do is go to school on each other's perspectives and points of view and seek that understanding first and really, really listen. And I know Jason is an incredible psychologist, and he's really put a lot of work in helping people to really hear each other. And I know, Jason, I want to maybe turn that over to you, because I think that's one of the greatest ways to surrender the one-up relationship. For someone to really feel heard, we have to surrender that one-up relationship. And I know that's something that you care a lot about, Jason, and maybe you want to add something there.
You're always putting me on the spot on these. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the process of that active listening, of really seeking to understand. When somebody feels heard, then they start to feel safer. And we have to turn our classrooms, our offices, and even our Zoom platforms, if we're online, into those safe spaces. And when a student feels safe, then the seeds of that relationship start to grow, and it turns into an environment that really generates more resilient. It really helps you maximize that relationship, and then we can leverage those relationships when we have them. And that good listening leads to empathy. Empathy is part of understanding, and then empathy leads to compassion, and compassion is the act of wanting to alleviate another human being's suffering. And when we have communities of people that are listening and exercising empathy and leading towards compassionate behavior, those are really great, strong communities that are really great to be a part of. And that's just to kind of bring it full circle. I think that's really one of the things I've admired most about the Berea community, is how committed they really are to building a community. And I think it's really, I mean, for lack of a better term, one of the most benevolent forms of education that I've ever seen. It's really at a higher level, where it's not just people aren't. Well, I got to be careful. I'll get myself in trouble. You're doing it right. You're doing it right out there, and it's impressive. And that's part of the reason that we wanted you to join us for this. And in all honesty, what you've done has really informed and inspired some of the perspective that we've taken on this concept of resilient listening that Christian was talking about.
You know, I hope down the road, I hope soon, political leaders, because this country is screaming for educational reform, and political leaders do need to see what's happening at Berea College. I've worked in over 25,000 schools. I've traveled 7 million miles. One of the greatest colleges on this country is Berea College. I'm telling you that. And I've been to some amazing colleges, but I think what they're doing there, if we're going to do anything about inequality issues, poverty issues, race relation issues, that model needs to be looked at and expanded. And I'm not saying it's the answer to all, but what we're screaming about that this country is looking for, we've got to have our political leaders. So if everybody would send an email to the White House with, I'm just kidding, but the, sorry.
You're going to get us all in trouble now, Christian.
Stop. But what I'm saying is, in closing here, we've got to, right now, we've got to listen to each other. We really do. And listen with as much of a non-judgmental attitude. I know every 5 minutes I keep saying to myself, people only know what they know. So I'm trying to increase my compassion right now when I'm seeing so much divisiveness, because most people are not acting out of maliciousness. It's just they're human beings, do what they do with the amount of information they have. And and that's why education is the most important thing on this planet. But education in combination with real economic resources have to come together. And until educate resilience, that relationship has to be number one, resilience and real economic opportunities with great education. That's the solution to these problems. And we have to deal with these economic issues. Until we deal with these economic issues, we're not going to see a lot of change. We have to deal with poverty. I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you for your time. You guys are my heroes out there. And there's 2 free resources you can access. We have a resilient, and parents. I wish we had more time to talk about parents, because during, blended approach, parents need resources. The parents are the counselors helping kids transition to college right now and stuff, because they don't have. So I just want to put a shout out for the parents really fast. Parents need resources. So we have over now almost 50,000 families using our resilience parenting guide. It's free. Go to our website. We spent years developing this. This is something we were going to sell down the road. We are giving it away free. We're going to continue to give it away free because it's blowing up across the country. So please get that.
Go to resilienceguide.org. Resilienceguide.org.
And then you can also, another free resource is you can go to the Resilience Breakthrough podcast. And we have some incredible people you can hear on that podcast. Dreama's husband's even on that podcast. He's amazing guy. So you got to go check out the podcast and hear Hassan Davis. You can hear him, and it's an amazing podcast. So please check that podcast out. You guys are my heroes. Thanks for all you do for students. And right now in education, we need these educators. We need you teachers, administrators, and counselors to hang in there. I know many of you are like, hey, I want to be directly with kids, and that will happen over time. But these students need you right now more than any time in America's education history. And you guys are the first responders to give kids hope, because we know education is the way out of these issues. Education is how we overcome racism, how we overcome poverty. It all starts with education. You guys are involved in the most important work. Thank you for all you do. You guys are my heroes.
Thank you. Dreama, Sarah, parting thoughts.
Thank you.
Just everything Christian said, ditto to that. So thank you all, and thank you for having us.
Thank you for all you guys do, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. This has been really rich. Everybody, please give our panelists a round of applause virtually. This has been really fun. I think this has touched a lot of hearts. Like I said, a lot of people shared their stories, and I hope it's really made a difference. I believe that it has. Lastly, thank you to all the participants and the attendees. You are doing the good work. This is really unprecedented times. What you're doing is not easy. The fact that you're showing up to participate in these says a lot. You're here during the summer. It means you're trying to get tools, trying to get better. And we are so appreciative of what you're doing. You're making a difference in these kids' lives, even if it doesn't feel like you are. I promise you, we hear it from the kids. They appreciate hearing from you. They appreciate the check-ins, all of that. Keep fighting the good fight. These kids need you. The future depends on it, and you're doing the greatest work in the world. So thank you so much. And I'm going to put up some resources on a slide, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Dreama.